Good day. Today's lecture is devoted to the training session or lesson as a central form of organizing the educational process. This topic is especially important because the lesson remains the basic unit through which teaching is planned, structured, and implemented. In other words, educational aims, content, methods, and interaction come together most clearly within the framework of the lesson. Therefore, an understanding of its structure and requirements is essential for every future teacher. At the outset, the lecture formulates its purpose in practical terms to familiarize students with the structural elements of the training session and to develop the ability to explain the basic requirements for an effective lesson. Accordingly, the discussion is directed not only toward definition but also toward professional understanding. The aim is to ensure that the lesson is perceived not as a routine classroom event, but as a pedagogically organized system with clear internal logic. A training session or lesson is defined here as the main form of organizing the educational process. It is conducted with a fixed group of students according to a timetable and curriculum and under the guidance of the teacher. Several key features are identified: fixed duration, a permanent group, teacher guidance, and planned objectives. This definition is especially significant because it shows that the lesson is not simply a period of time in which teaching happens. Rather, it is a structured pedagogical form in which organization, continuity, and purpose are brought into unity. The lesson occupies a central position in education for several reasons. First, it ensures systematic learning since knowledge is presented and developed in a planned sequence. Second, it organizes teacher-student interaction, thereby creating a framework for educational communication. Third, it supports both intellectual and personal development. Finally, as the slide notes, the lesson remains effective even under modern technological conditions. Thus, the lesson retains its pedagogical relevance, not because it is traditional, but because it continues to provide the most stable structure for purpose. The slide identifies four major functions of the lesson: instructional, developmental, diagnostic, and educational. The instructional function provides knowledge and skills. The developmental function strengthens thinking and memory. The diagnostic function checks knowledge and progress. The educational function forms values and behavior. Taken together, these functions show that the lesson is multifunctional. It does not merely transmit information, rather, it also develops the learner intellectually, evaluates progress, and influences personal formation. Therefore, a well-organized lesson must address all these dimensions in a balanced way. The lesson structure presented here includes several essential stages: the organizational stage, goal setting and motivation, checking previous knowledge, presentation of new material, practice and consolidation, and finally, summary and homework. This sequence is pedagogically meaningful because each stage performs a specific function and prepares the conditions for the next. Accordingly, the lesson should not be viewed as a collection of disconnected actions. On the contrary, it is a coherent process in which preparation, explanation, practice, and closure are logically related. This slide focuses on two important phases of the lesson, the beginning and the main part. At the beginning, the teacher organizes the class, creates a positive atmosphere, motivates students, and explains the objectives of the lesson. This opening stage is especially important because it sets the tone for all further work. The main part includes explanation of new material, the use of examples and discussion, active student participation, and the development of critical thinking. Thus, the lesson moves from organizational preparation to substantive intellectual work, and this transition must be managed with clarity and pedagogical purpose. The next stage is practice and consolidation. Here, students complete exercises, solve problems, and apply knowledge in practical situations. This stage is pedagogically indispensable because understanding cannot remain purely theoretical. It must be strengthened through action, repetition, and meaningful application. Therefore, practice and consolidation serve as the point at which newly introduced material becomes more stable, more conscious, and more usable. In this respect, they transform explanation into learning achievement. The slide then outlines the principal requirements of an effective lesson. clear goals, logical structure, active student involvement, appropriate teaching methods, good time management, and feedback together with assessment. Each of these elements is necessary. Clear goals provide direction. Logical structure ensures coherence. Active involvement strengthens learning. Appropriate methods support. Understanding time management maintains rhythm, and feedback makes progress visible. Consequently, the quality of a lesson depends not on one isolated factor, but on the coordination of all these pedagogical requirements within a single, well-organized educational process. The conclusion of the lecture states the central idea with appropriate clarity. The lesson is the key element of education. A good lesson combines teaching, development, and assessment. It creates a positive learning environment, and it helps students grow and succeed. Thus, the lesson should be regarded not merely as a formal unit of the timetable, but as the principal form in which pedagogical aims are realized in practice. Its quality, therefore, has direct influence on the effectiveness of education as a whole. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lecture has clarified the concept, structure, and main requirements of the training session.